Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Property AI Report. This is your weekly digest of all things property and AI, brought to you by me, Malcolm Callion, and my co-host and good friend, Matt Goddard. Matt, how are you today?
Yeah, very well. It's good to catch you at the start of the week for once, Mal.
I know, mate. This is like refreshing.
Unheard
So
of.
yeah, indeed. It's Monday morning. It is 7:20 on Monday morning. We recorded the last one last Thursday and thought we were going to be short of things to talk about, didn't we? But that is not the case.
Well, that's it. And not just in terms of AI news either, is it, Mal?
Exactly. There's some juicy property stuff to get our teeth into. So why don't we go there right now and get cracking with our property news. Okay, so Rightmove on late Thursday, early Friday, released their latest results, which showed the usual kind of steady sort of uplift of something like 7 to 9% of profits and stuff like that. But the big news, the thing that caught everybody's attention was they've decided to put £18 million of their £300 million profit into AI. Now, it then caused a share price tank 28%, nearly 29%, first thing Friday morning, which then kind of bounced back a little bit to I think 12% is what it was over the weekend, minus 12%. But still pretty chunky. So yeah, obviously lots to kind of unpack about how that has happened. What's your take on that?
It's obviously not directly related to my porter launching and exhibiting EA Masters on the Tuesday, is it? Although, I'm sure AI Mal had a comment on socials about that over the weekend. So the background to their announcement was there's 27 AI initiatives in development. Obviously a chunky bit of spare change that they're throwing at those. And some of them, I guess you could almost call them table stakes now in terms of the sort of two new valuation models, which the likes of EA Masters, not EA Masters, 20EA, Ultra, maybe EA Masters as well, are working on or have those sort of already available, don't they? So these vendor prediction models, and there's also in there AI keywords and furthermore sort of the pieces that do what Jamie McAnally also Enhance already does in terms of those image touch-ups and removing clutter. And the example in the article I was reading in Estate Agent today was you can scandy up your home as well, or add an Art Deco style. And I guess it's something that Model Prop does as well, isn't it? Sorry, I mentioned Auto Enhance, but I'm sure there's plenty of other good products out there doing the same.
Yeah, no. So yeah, I think as you say, there's a lot of this kind of, as you say, sort of table stake stuff. I was at the Voice of the Agent conference on Friday, really great conference, and Heather Staff of Street was there and talking about her kit that essentially you can just press buttons and it does it kind of within the CRM. So look, this is something that I think it's really important. I look back, I've been in the industry way too long, but when floor plans kind of started to be the thing that everybody had to have suddenly. And then it was like, virtual staging, that was virtual tours was kind of the thing. And that became sort of mainstream. And this feels like it's the same kind of deal, right? And I think it's really important. I think that actually it is helping people to advertise and promote their properties better. And therefore is obviously one of the reasons why we offer it is we think it's really important. But yeah, I think that you've seen perhaps Zoopla, I think a good while ago, maybe 6 months ago, introduced the ability to refresh properties live on the site with something called Roomvo, which to a greater or lesser extent you can argue about whether it's easy and whether it actually works. Sometimes I know that it does take a door and replace it with a window and things like that. Those and those are the problems that that need to be solved, and that's why we always have a human in the loop rather than just letting people just kind of go there. Anyway, so I think with the Rightmove stuff, yes, I think that this is interesting, and I think that they're going. They're not talking about wildly crazy developments. I think that the things they said they were going to do some stuff for consumers, stuff for agents, and stuff for their own team. Okay, which is, put that in the eminently sensible bucket. But I think it's just the fact that this is a beast that has not focused on anything innovative for so long. I think all of its shareholders are really quite happy with it. Just keep delivering the dividends and just keep buying back the shares, and just keep priming the share price. So now that it actually looks like they're going to do something vaguely innovative and investment wise, all of those shareholders who were just quite happy to just pocket the divvies are running to the hills and going, no, this is what I bought. I thought I was just getting a really, a fat check every single year. So yeah, I think that's so I don't think they've spooked those guys, those investors. I don't think they've done enough to attract the new lot of investors, the kind of ones that actually are hungry for AI innovation. 18 million out of a 300 million pound profit is as you said, kind of small change, and I think it's going to reduce their margin from 70% to 67%, which is still, it's hardly the stuff of, this is a handbrake turn and we're really, really, really going to go for it. So, yeah, look, I just think it's neither one thing nor the other. And I think that's been kind of their big problem. And I think it's going to continue to be their big problem. And it all boils down in the end to the fact that, at the end, they don't own the data. Agents own the data, and agents have the power in the end to decide where that data goes. And as AI can find 100% of the market, it can find properties wherever they are, and agentic search becomes more and more mainstream, then, the brand Rightmove is going to be under a significant pressure. And I think, a lot of people have started to sort of wake up to that as well. Our next story in our property news is all about a solid story. The land registry has been around for a long old time and has not been very fast about its changes and its innovation either. But they came out last week, didn't they? Towards the end of last week, and again, in our little kind of bubble of a couple of days between these podcasts, and said that it's going to speed up searches with fewer errors. Happily, but it's going to take a little while, isn't it, man?
Well, I think the one that stood out for me is giving themselves a proper high 5, high 10 even, because they said in March they surpassed their target of processing 95% of all applications within 12 months of submission, which is a pretty astounding. I'm sure that must be a stretch target as well, right? But that sort of target setting leads you to realise that when they say that they expect to be able to aiming to make simple changes to register digitally within 10 years, which 2035, I think I could probably get a ChatGPT agent to register something digitally for me now. But 10 years ago, it sounds like another stretch goal. And I realise that there's a lot of fragmented processes and archaic systems and that sort of thing. But looking at 10 years to be able to do this, when you look at something like, and without sort of veering off too far, when one of my best mates from home was involved in the digitisation of the passport application process, and it isn't that long ago that you used to have to go and queue outside Victoria to get your passport turned around same day, or you turned them off and wait weeks, and it was all paper and like the photo from the local news agent pasted in there. And now it's exceptionally quick to be able to do that in your driving licence and reuse your photos. So if we can do it for something like passport, how come we can't get land registry up there? Unless, of course, there isn't the funding and it's not a priority for the powers that be.
It is, it baffles me that this is such a big unlock. All right, actually getting this data out into the world as quickly as possible is so important. But yeah, it's just been and everyone, as you say, high-fiving each other for doing these things within a year. It's like it's a year. That's just so out of date. So yeah, look, I think it's going to. I would hope that somebody is going to kind of get hold of it, and as part of the whole, how do we get the time it takes for processes, for transactions to go through, how do we speed all that up? I would hope that this gets kind of swept up and also we need to make sure that it's kind of registered and the data is out there, because people do make decisions about property based on this information. It also feeds into sold price data and all that sort of stuff in terms of house prices and things like that. So it's really important information. So yeah, I think it's the fact they're talking about it is a half tick, but yeah, the timeframes on these just remain so antiquated that it baffles me that this is such a big kind of a big announcement and a big kind of pat on their own backs, because it still feels way too long. All right, wanted to dip a little bit into, we've got some Reaper action over in Australia. Some interesting stuff that they're doing out there, Matt. What's going on?
So there's Reaper Evolve was back end of last week. So put it in context, Matt McGowan, who joined Reaper as the Chief Product Officer when they acquired Console, which is probably Australia's biggest property management system, brought with him this concept of doing biannual marketing or product launches, and Evolve was the most recent. And to put sort of the announcement in context, when I joined Repeat, 2012, so coming up on over 13 years ago, there wasn't really a single CRM for sales and lettings and property management client accounts. You were sort of at the time still in 2 or 3 different systems. And sort of when I joined from Foxtons, we took Repeat's lettings and property management client account solution to market within one CRM. And Australia, amazingly, all that time later, still doesn't have a single contact system. And what Repeat have announced is actually having acquired Agent Box back in 2018, and then Console, which is sort of property management and client accounts, or trusters accounts to call it out there, and then front end lettings with IRE. They've now launched Repeat One, which is a single solution for that market. And that was the big announcement there. So I always sort of say in some areas, Australia's quite far ahead because of the vendor paid advertising. So a lot of the marketing is sort of 5-10 years ahead. But actually, in other places, it's quite far behind because you're looking at systems that we've had for a while. But it's a massive announcement for them. And I actually think it could well be the kickoff for other people moving into this area as well. I heard that Property Me, that's probably the second biggest property management system out in Australia, really impressive bit of kit, has just been acquired by private equity for something like 13 times multiplier. But I have a gut feeling that probably what's going to happen is that business and maybe someone like Rex, who's already owned by private equity, may well get brought together by something like that and sort of bring another offering to market. And MRI have done a lot more acquisitions over in Australia than they've done here. So it could well be the start of something. But it's always interesting to see, as these systems move and changes happen, what bubbles out that we might be able to utilise over here in our market.
100%. Yeah, and it is interesting, as you say, that Australia is so far ahead in so many ways. I mean, their marketing is like off the scale in terms of how they get properties out there. Again, much because vendors will actually invest and pay extra for that. But yeah, the sort of back office stuff is a little bit far behind. Good stuff. All right, so that is our property news for this week. We are going to now dive into our AI and tech news. All right, so Microsoft, who has been sort of trailing along in OpenAI's wake, really, the ChatGPT kind of wake, because it was a heavy investor, remains a heavy investor in ChatGPT, is now kind of branching out on its own, isn't it? And it's been using its kind of Copilot tool to really try and box off a lot of its historic strength, which is around the Office, the Windows platforms, and yeah, now it's laying out really sort of ambitious AI vision for itself, and it's got some real kind of big hitters, Mustafa Suleyman amongst them on the team, haven't it?
Yeah, so Mustafa Suleyman's the CEO of Microsoft AI, basically, isn't he? And he joined them from DeepMind, and for those that aren't aware of him, he wrote a brilliant book called The Coming Wave, maybe 2, even 3 years ago now, that talked quite effectively about AI and where we were going towards. And whenever there's commentary, Mustafa Suleyman's always got something quite tangible to talk about. He, if you don't follow him already on LinkedIn, for anyone listening, worth digging out his profile and seeing some of his posts, because he's always got great little videos of AI in use, especially Copilot, which is obviously the Microsoft tool, things like Microsoft Vision. He was demonstrating that maybe 2 years ago now, where you could talk to Microsoft Vision, see it, or it would watch as you browse websites and give you feedback on what suit and shirt combo you might be wanting to purchase for a wedding that coming week, for example. And he's now come out saying that this is sort of all pivoting off the back of the restructuring of OpenAI, isn't it? And then the rumoured or sort of hinting towards the IPO. And even last week there was some sort of quite, not scandalous, but punchy comments from their CFO around the fact that they needed to be supported by the government with a backstop in case they were, what was it? They're too big to fail now, which wreaked a little bit of havoc.
Yeah, so this is OpenAI's CFO basically just kind of saying that essentially if they did run out of money, then it'll be okay because the government would kind of just dive in and stuff like that. And that caused a massive bit of upset around, oh my God, this is actually a bubble and everything's going to go to hell. And then everything just stabilised and it's all fine again now.
I think it's almost a case of, I'll come back to Mustafa Suleyman and Microsoft in a moment, but it's almost a case with that OpenAI CFO thing that they're still acting like a startup, aren't they? And not realising that they've got quite a volume and weight behind them now, and you can't just make flippant comments in podcasts. It was with the Wall Street Journal as well, wasn't it? So it wasn't just a slip of the tongue. That the Wall Street Journal, the journalist played it back to the CFO, and she confirmed it. So it's like you can't get away with that sort of thing when you're the size that OpenAI are now.
Exactly. You've got to think there's like media trading and stuff like that. It's got along somewhere. So she should kind of know as CFO that there are various things not to say. But yeah, no, but everything is now calmed down again on that particular thing. But yeah, as you say, Microsoft is kind of out, and Suleiman's sort of leading this charge, isn't he?
That's it. And he's now talking about the race for super intelligence, which we saw all the acqui-hires over the summer with Meta gunning for this, and some silly it was 1 billion salary for a particular individual, wasn't there, as part of the acqui-hire? But Microsoft are now joining that, and I have to admit I was playing around with Copilot Studio at the weekend because that's how rock and roll my life can be, and
crazy.
You can't see it being that far behind, and also the fact that they're building out their own large language models as well now, so it's sort of decouple themselves from that OpenAI relationship, but at the same time still got quite a significant sum invested in them, and they're due to gain quite a lot of money, aren't they, as and when OpenAI floats.
100%, yeah. So as you say, Suleiman is one of the more credible kind of commentators of all of the kind of leaders of the AI teams in the frontier labs. He's less of a hype merchant than you kind of get with Musk and Altman and all that lot. So yeah, it's well worth listening to. And yeah, look, I think, as you say, they've kind of been a little bit overshadowed by OpenAI and by ChatGPT, and they now seem to be kind of just crawling out from behind them and starting to build some credible stuff. And they've got the distribution. There are a lot of people. I think, Matt, you use Windows, don't you? On your
I do. That's why I haven't got Dia or Atlas running on here. It's not a Perplexity Comet for me. But then it means that I've got AI that works, isn't it, rather than your Siri?
Yeah. So I think Microsoft is almost like kind of sleeping giant, one to watch. They've got some credible people. They've got a good distribution network. They've got a good understanding of where AI is going. When people start to talk about super intelligence, I do worry a little bit. Mainly because Mark Zuckerberg started talking about it before anybody else really went for it, and now others are starting to talk about it too. But again, Suleiman's got much more credibility than most. So yeah, and just to be clear, so there's artificial general intelligence, which is where AI can do most of the economic work to the standard of a human, and then super intelligence, artificial super intelligence (ASI), which is when it can beat most humans at most things, essentially. So that's what they're kind of seeing over in some.
And then there's the singularity, isn't there, Mal, where we just all come together like RoboCop, the original, not the reboot.
That's exactly yes, the good one. Yes, exactly that. So everybody's, I'm sure, looking forward to that moment as well. But yeah, it's that we are on the journey towards that, I think, is probably some way away, and again, this is why kind of starting to talk about it now, it just feels a little bit premature. But yeah, there is the stuff we've got right now is so good that we've really kind of got, let's just get to grips with this. Let's just kind of use this. I think there is so much, productivity gains and just kind of really amazing stuff if and when people just kind of get their arms around what GPT-5 can do, that sort of stuff. If you look at VO3 from Google 3.1, it's just insane. So actually start using the things that are here now, and then yes, let's get on to looking at some of the things that can be on the track.
I think the biggest problem on that point though is still a lot of people who want to use agentic and start doing things with AI. And obviously VO3 and 3.1 is great because you can think about in an instance what video you're going to produce and such like. But if you're trying to do agentic, you really need to understand your own systems and processes as it is and get that tacit knowledge out of people's head, right? And that's a lot of people are racing off and like magpies and just getting all the shiny new things and not going, well, hold on, what is X, Y, and Z doing and how can we process that? And I think there are some really simple use cases that are actually quite quick to spin up. And I know you did a few of those within Model Prop. And so it's like looking at a return on investment, but also what can you do now without a huge amount of sticking plaster over the top?
Exactly right. So yeah, again, I speak to agents all the time, and having somebody within the business who is like an AI champion, and I think if you asked around your team, then there will be one person who, at least one person who is really quite interested in this and is kind of like, quite energized by it. And I'd probably pick that person and say, right, go look at everything, go interview, talk to everybody in the business, find out what they're doing, why they're doing it. And if you're large enough that you've got different teams, different departments, then if you can get a champion in each of those departments, and then just get them really kind of looking into it, and then investigating what's out there, and then finding very simple ways to deploy very straightforward small initiatives that are just going to improve it, because that I think is where to start. Because
we actually, with a couple of my clients, we've done in the last few weeks AI surveys just to all staff and all team members, just say, what are you using, how are you using it, almost trying to get away from that shadow AI thing where people are secretly doing it in the background because they think they might get told off, but also trying to learn who those people are, and then asking at the end, what's the one thing that you'd like AI to take off your plate, and some of the stuff coming out the back of that's really interesting.
Yeah, no, I think that's brilliant. So start looking. If you are not already, start looking at what is out there. Start trying deploying it within various different functions and various kind of just processes, because it can make a real difference, and it's only going to get better. Anyway, so that is Microsoft, the sleeping giant, and they are coming, and there's going to be a lot more, I think, from their Copilot, which is their version of ChatGPT. Elsewhere in AI this week, we've got Anthropic, which is another one of the frontier labs, and was set up by some alumni of OpenAI back in the day, and it's almost like a kind of perennial candidate for being taken over, I think, because it doesn't have all of the big kind of the big cache that ChatGPT's got, or the history that Google's got, or the eccentric guy that Grok and XAI have got with Elon Musk. They're just kind of steady Eddie, but it's got some huge numbers now, right? It's reckons that by 2028 it's going to be turning over 70 billion on its own, and that is astonishing for that kind of second place startup, right?
And in terms of how that works, it's because they've got Claude, haven't they, as their large language model, and more importantly, Claude Code, which is really sort of a bit of a trailblazer in the coding area. And I know over the summer it bounced between ChatGPT and Codex and back to Claude, but all the time the developers I work with anyway, the Claude is the very much the go-to, and people are actually using Claude codes not just for coding, because of the tools and the tools that it has, the ability to actually go off and utilize files and create things. So it's sort of that side of things where coding is still, for me, probably most forwards in terms of where agents being used, especially agentic, and talk about vibe coding. It's like that's a lot of the developers I work with don't even write code anymore. They're just talking all the time to Claude and having things created, and then doing the pull requests, which is the sort of second step validation around this. But they've also got Anthropic got huge investment from Google, haven't they? And there's talk for the potential,
and Amazon as well, right?
Yeah, because and Amazon's I don't know if it's actually powering Amazon's Alexa Plus, which has started hitting the shelves now as well, hasn't it? But it's Google looking at putting a potential additional 350 billion in as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it is interesting that it continues. Anthropic, continues to kind of row its own boat, whilst obviously being supported by some of these big businesses, as you say, Google, who have their own model in Gemini. So I think it's the coding side of things is really fascinating. Obviously, you're closer to it than I am, because Cursor is one of the kind of vibe coding platforms that has historically used Anthropic and Claude. It's now launched its own one, I think. Is that something you use? Is that something your teams use?
No, Cursor had a bit of a fall away as well, because it was nearly acquired by OpenAI, wasn't it? And that sort of deal fell away, and Cursor is becoming less and less prevalent. That's not to say it's not still out there, but Claude tends to be the go-to for certainly the developers I'm working with.
Yeah, no, fair enough. So look, again, want to continue to watch how, whenever a business starts talking about, what its revenues are going to be in 3 years' time, I often think that's a signal that they are going to get taken over. They're trying to fatten themselves up for some kind of thing. But they have managed to row their own boat, as I say, and be very, very successful without having to get taken over. So it remains to be seen where they go next. Right, we want to go now into space, don't we? Now, again, one of Google's, they call them the moonshot projects, where basically people can just kind of do some crazy stuff inside Google and see if it works. They are now going to see if they can get some of the sun's rays from space.
You say crazy projects as well, which maybe makes people think that these things never land. But actually, Waymo was one of their moonshot projects, wasn't it? And they're landing in, is that the right turn of phrase? Landing in London at the start of next year, hopefully. So Waymo being the self-driving taxis that are already out in San Francisco and places. So this particular moonshot is called Project Suncatcher. And the aim is to put these AI data centers that are popping up everywhere from Teesside to Nevada. And that's feels like a song lyric or an album name, but to put them in space and to actually get the data centers out there and bring with it the environmental savings. Although I appreciate they're saying there's going to be massive environmental savings by having data centers in space, but how do we get them there in the first place? Surely there's an effect on environment with that.
Small impact of the rockets taking off and presumably people needing or things needing to go out and monitor it. Yeah, and do you think, like, if that's kind of in the way of the sun between us, is it going to be like a new sort of I don't know, just cast a shadow over, like, I don't know, the entire of Europe every once in a while?
Cast a shadow definitely is a song lyric, isn't it? But I think there's enough satellites up there in the orbit for probably not to worry about the shadow being cast on us. But and then I think you made the point previously as well about how do they cool it down. But I think space is pretty cold.
Do you think so? This is the science section where me and you chat about, our vast knowledge of.
You're the one that's just been to Bletchley Park. Did they not get into that side of things, or just focus on Turin?
Yeah, no, it was amazing, by the way, and very, very, but well worth the visit. Yeah, so this is, again, just interesting ways that these massive organizations who foresee that we are going to just need relentless amounts of increased compute, as they call it, to deal with all of the AI that will be permeating our everyday lives. And yeah, where do we put them? We're going to run out of space pretty soon, and therefore, no pun intended, thank you. Therefore, yes, why don't we use the space in space? And so they're investigating that. I'm sure that once they start doing it, that Elon Musk will run very quickly to.
Well, it's probably his rockets that are being used, isn't it? And he'll probably know that space is actually extremely cold. It's just above absolute zero, which is about 2.7 Kelvin or minus 270 degrees, which is definitely colder than Reykjavik when I went the other March.
There we go, kids. Don't work hard on your studies, and you can be as up to date with the temperature in space as we are. But yeah, no, I think it's obviously interesting. It's fascinating. When they will actually get this to kind of fruition, they said that early 2027 is when they're looking to get some prototypes up there. So yeah, when the land registry finally actually gets everything together, we may have data. We may have had data systems in space for about 5 years. So that'd be nice. All right. Lastly, on our AI news, we are, as we like to do on this show, getting down with the kids and talking about Snap. Aren't we, Matt? Because we know loads about this stuff.
That's it. I occasionally open my Snapchat to discover I've got various things from my godson who for some reason bounces between that and WhatsApp to message me. But he's no worse than my dad, who goes to about 5 or 6 different things and picks up a conversation one and then the other. But this particular story is around Snapchat and Perplexity signing $400 million deal to put their AI search within Snapchat, isn't it? So I think it's a similar to how llamas inside WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, right?
Yeah, and I mean it's quite annoying in some ways because you have to use that AI, and that AI obviously has a certain style, certain personality, certain foibles, certain problems. So Meta AI, it's not great. It's really, and everything you put into it, goes straight back to the Facebook, the Meta mothership.
A bit like any WhatsApp you put in as well, right? They're not reading your messages.
Yeah, so it's the same sort of deal. It's like, right, okay, I understand with certain AIs, it will go back, and I will, my data is being used, but you kind of get a choice. And that I think is quite important. But once you start baking these things in, as Meta has and as Snap is here, then you only get to use that particular version. Then I think that kind of can be quite restrictive and actually start to put people off using the actual tool itself. So yes, not that I am a regular Snap user, but yeah, I do think that it's like all these things that there are kind of cycles, aren't there, where people get really, really into them and then it kind of disappears off. I know that the 16-year-old still uses it and snaps like daily with various people. They've got a streak, I think it's called, going on that goes on for years. But yes, aside from that, I don't think it's used for a huge amount these days. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if everybody else follows suit. With are you only going to be able to use Google Gemini inside Chrome, for example, things like that. What else?
Definitely inside Siri as well, right? That new model with all the trillion parameters that Siri's going to be using from Google.
That's right. And paying them an absolute fortune for the privilege. All right, that is our AI and tech news this week. We want to just drop very quickly into our tool of the week. All right, Matt, this is over from Australia, but was debuted, I think, for us here in the UK in EA Masters last week, wasn't it?
So this is Tappi. So two things sort of quite close to my heart. Obviously, Australia that I bang on about a lot, but also property management, having started in that department way back when at Foxtons. And this is Tappi that's come over here to the UK. They're at EA Masters, as you say, debuting there, and the owners are over just meeting various property management businesses over the course of November. But actually, it's really quite a simple maintenance flow that's already been integrated with Repit and Alto. And I really found it quite interesting because it didn't just do what Fixflow did, whereby they start with the sort of graphical reporting and needing a login for suppliers and various other things, but it sort of uncouples you from needing a login, and it's got some really quite smart AI built into it alongside a voice agent for it. And so they're over the course of November. And I think for too long we've been a bit beholden to Fixflow as the only property maintenance tool in the UK, and some of the integrations mean that actually people are using things like Repit in a way that Repit was never designed to do in order to work with the Fixflow integration. And actually to see someone else come along and to try break that monopoly of here's the property maintenance tool you need to use, I think will hopefully mean that Fixflow resolves some of those existing issues, but also give a bit more competition in that area of the market.
Yeah, the great as Fixflow is, as you say, it's been around for a long old time, and it's kind of the default. But yeah, competition is always good. So yeah, great to see somebody coming into the market that's going to see if we can't push that along technologically as well. All right, finally, we are going to dip into our weird A of the week. Matt, have you tried this? It looks very, 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 very cool. It looks perfect for you.
Well, funnily enough, the reason I pulled this article out at the time was because you'd commented on what coloured manicure I was going to be getting at that particular weekend. I think it was fresh off the AI beard shaver as well that obviously I could utilise on my head. So this is the first AI manicure that you can be using, and it's got quite an interesting little video that goes alongside it. I'm sure we could share in the show notes. But I don't see the issue with having my base colour and top coat all being applied by an AI machine. Do you, Mal?
It's I for too long it's just been humans. So yeah, no, bring the machines on to make my pinkies look so beautiful. And yeah, look, I think it's, as you say, it's weird, but it's just a kind of another example of how it's making a crossover from just being digital into the kind of physical space. And yeah, I just think it's a very fun example of what's possible now, and just kind of imagine what might be possible again when the land registry finally gets its act together in 10 years' time.
All right, a great way to finish.
That is right. That is all we've got time for this week. Thank you so much for listening in. We will be back again next week, hopefully around sort of the same time. So actually, we're going to go.
It's up to you, Mal.
Is it? Okay, thanks, mate. I'll send you the invite with a couple of hours' notice.
Thank you. One thought I had, though, during the course of today, we were talking about sort of the singularity and AI taking over, and touched on RoboCop. But if you think about RoboCop, like the story of the film, unfortunately the guy dies, and then he's brought back as half man, half robot to go back to work. Surely if you get a second opportunity, you just want to kick back and relax, right? You don't want to be thrust back into doing the podcast with me.
Well, listen, this will be the first thing that I do once I am dead and then resurrected. I'm going to make sure we reboot this as quickly as possible. Absolutely. We should do. I think I see what our ident is going to be for this week's episode.
I thought we were running out of ideas there.
No, we'll get there. So listen, thanks again, guys. Good to catch up. We will catch up with you next week. Thank you also, Matt.
Have a lovely week, Mal.
All right.
Take care, everyone.
See you guys.